self-love is not selfish. We have got to, as women, put ourselves first.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, everything else falls apart. So I think as women, we have got to learn to put ourselves first.
Yeah.
And let our values guide us. But that does mean we need to sit down and work out what our values are. You have to sit down and, a bit like your communication style, formalize it. We as a family sat down and worked out what our top 10 values are, how we define them, created our family charter, put it up on the wall. And it really helps. It becomes the DNA of the family.
Welcome to Empower Her, the podcast dedicated to empowering women with their health, wealth and well-being. Just before I get started, I have a quick request. Please consider following and sharing this podcast. Your support not only amplifies our reach, but also enables me to bring in more remarkable guests and empower more women. Today, I'm embarking on a transformative dialogue with Rita Chowdhry, an award-winning coach with an impressive 35-year track record in coaching, learning and development. We'll explore the essence of living a fulfilled life, discovering the importance of prioritising yourself and navigating the complexities of cultural expectations, parenting and family dynamics. Rita is a seasoned expert and author of GET SAVVI and will share insights on thriving in the modern day. Embark on this journey with us to uncover the secrets of personal empowerment and fulfilment. Rita, welcome to the Empower Her podcast. Thank you so much for coming. This is the first time in a studio, which is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. If you could talk a little bit about who you are and your journey, your story from what you were doing to what you're doing now, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a real honour. I'm the first person in your studio. So my name's Rita Chowdhry. I am a mother of three. I am a coach, a professional coach. I've always been passionate about learning and development. So I started off my career as a teacher, as a business studies teacher. I did that for 25 years. And as my children got older, I wanted to do more. I realised that there's so much more I could do, particularly because my children, all three of them, have some form of what used to be called special needs, now defined as neurodiversity.
Yes.
And when I explored that, I realised that actually, if you're going to get children to be their best learners, you've got to really work on their strengths. You've got to work on their mindset. And once I did that, went along that journey, I thought, actually, it's not just about educating children, it's not just about imparting knowledge, it's about working on the mindset. So as my children got older, after 25 years of teaching, I went to train as a coach. And that coaching journey made me realize that I could touch the hearts and minds of so many people if I went into coaching. So I set up my coaching business, and that's where I am now. I work with corporates and individuals in achieving success in their life, whatever success means to you. It could mean wealth, it could mean health, it could mean relationships. I work on all of those areas.
Okay, that's fantastic. It's great actually to, know someone that coaches on all those different aspects, because usually when you find a coach, it's usually either a career coach or a health coach or something along those lines. And if you're covering all of that, I think it's really important, because for me, I think if you have your health in check, you have your wealth and well-being in check. Yes. And I think that's really important. Can I ask you, focusing on women, what does empowering women mean to you? What does that mean for you? And how do you think women can go about empowering themselves to achieve whatever that is they want to achieve?
Right. That's a very good question. I think the first thing to empower anybody is following the 5 steps that the framework that I've created. When I went into coaching, I thought I want to know what makes successful people, whether it's a successful parent, a successful CEO, a successful athlete. What is a success? What are the attributes you need? And I found that there are 5 steps to being successful. I call them being savvy. Savvy is an acronym that I use for the 5 steps. And the first element of being savvy, the S, stands for self-awareness, is understanding who you are. Now, the thing with women is we so often allow society to define who we are through our relationships, through our roles. Even when you ask me, who are you? I'm tempted always to go to who I am through my relationship. I'm a mother or my occupation. But what we forget to do is to define who we really are. I love learning and development. I'm ambitious, I'm driven. Yet, I think particularly for women, we don't allow ourselves to discover who we are. We let society decide who we should be. And that means our success is judged by how much of a good mother we are. Are we a good daughter? Are we a good daughter-in-law? Are we a good wife? And even the most successful of women are defined through their roles. I don't know if you're familiar with Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo.
Yes, I am.
I'm a real role model.
Yeah, she has a fantastic story, and I've listened to her interview, actually. It's amazing.
I don't know if you listened to her interview where she's asked about how she balances work life. And
I did.
One of my favourite stories from her is when she says that she was given the position of president of PepsiCo. So this is a 300,000 employee organisation, turnover of 700 billion. And she rushes home, often worked very late, rushes home at 8 o'clock and said, instead of finishing my work till 12 o'clock midnight, she rushes home to share the news, parks a car in the garage, goes home. And mother's then said, Mum, I've got to tell you some news. She's married and has her own children, but her mum stays with her to help her out. She says, I don't care about your news, go out and get the milk. And she says, but my husband's car's in the garage. What time did he come home? He says, 8 o'clock. Why didn't you ask him? He was tired. Go out and get the milk. We need it for the morning. She goes out and gets the milk, comes back, slams it on the counter and says, but Mum, my news, I've been made president of this of PepsiCo. And she says, darling, I don't care what your titles are. When you walk through that garage, you have to leave your crown in the garage. You are our mother, a wife, a daughter. Nobody else can take over those roles. And I think that just sums up what society expects of us.
Yes.
So often we are expected to perform in all those areas that we can tend to lose our identity. Some women never find it because they fill those roles that people, their family, religion, culture expect. And even if we do find it, like Indra Nooyi, that success is managing those roles. And I think one way we can empower women is stop and think about who you actually are. I know I love learning, development. I'm ambitious, I'm driven. I should live a life that allows me to do that. And if I did that, I will be empowering myself. And it's absolutely essential that the first stage to empowerment is self-awareness. And that's what I do with my clients. First of all, let's look at who you are. And, I'm not saying you diminish the role of being a mother, but I can be a better mother if I know that I live a life that allows me to use my strengths, acknowledges that I have weaknesses, but allows me to think about how I'm going to overcome those weaknesses.
I think you're so right, especially within our culture, the Asian culture as well. Those roles are defined very, it's kind of quite black and white. You're a mother, you're a daughter-in-law, you're this, you're that. And I know for me personally, after I got married, I didn't really know what my identity was anymore. It was quite difficult. And then especially when I became a mother, it became even more difficult. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I didn't know who I was anymore, and that example that you gave of, oh, go and do this, but why doesn't my husband do it? He's been here all this time. Oh, he's tired. Completely resonates. And it makes you kind of feel a bit, where is your place in this household, in this world? And trying to find that is quite difficult. And I know you said you need to take the time to sit back and really find out who you are. But what do you say to people that say, but how do you do that? Right. I mean, it's the how. How do you do that? It's like when people say you should forgive, or you should do this, or you should do that. How do you do that? What is that process?
I go back to the 5 steps of being savvy. It's how do you even find yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, I have lots of women in your situation where they come to a stage where their life changes.
Yeah.
They get married, they have children, the children leave the home.
Yeah.
And then they think, well, all these years I defined myself through being a mother, but now my role as a mother is less significant because my children have flown the nest, or they become more independent and they don't need me so much, and I've given up my career. Now what do I do? So I keep saying, go back to discovering who you are. And the way I do it with my clients is, let's do a psychometric profile test. Okay. And these tests are done, the one that I use is called DISC. It's done 75% of the FTSE, not the FTSE, the Fortune 500 companies in America use it for leadership development and team development. It's used for recruitment. And if you want to develop yourself, start off with what's the baseline. So if you came to me and says, Rita, I'm in this dilemma. Who am I? I'm expected to be the mother, but I enjoy my work. I'd say to you, let's find out what your drivers are. So for me, I'm an inspirer. So my happy place is when I'm driving others to achieve. So hence why I was drawn to teaching.
Yeah.
Now, I'm an inspirer, but I'm also a driver. I like control. So I'm not going to be less of that person.
Yeah.
I know what was frustrating me about teaching is I didn't have control. So setting up my own business where I had control and inspiring others was the perfect thing for me to do. Now, how is that going to impact my family? Because I'm thinking, I want to set up this business, but I also want to be there for them. What I think is, let me use my strengths. Let me make money using my strengths so I can pay somebody to do the things I don't want to do. Yeah. Unload the dishwasher and do the laundry. Yeah. Why is it I should have to do it? If I can contribute to the family, to the resources of the family, and we can collectively come up with ideas of how the work that we need done to run the family can be shared, then why should it be just my responsibility? My responsibility is to get that done as part of one of the family members, but it doesn't have to be me unloading the dishwasher.
Yeah.
My husband doesn't want to do it and he doesn't want to do it either. Let's get somebody else doing it. I'll work a bit harder. And that's what I'd say. Those are the kind of solutions I'd come up with my clients.
Yeah.
You be who you are to the best of your ability, and it'll be best for the whole family.
So I guess if we're talking about families and being a parent, or even if, you don't have children, setting up your home is really kind of a good thing to do to move forward, just figuring out what is it that's blocking you in the home. Like you say, unloading the dishwasher. I mean, for me, me and my friend was talking, we were having this conversation a few days ago about why is it that only we see things in the home, that the sink is full, or there's rubbish on the floor, or there's clothes on the floor. Why do we only see that and no one else seems to see that there's rubbish everywhere? And then we go and keep, picking it up or putting things away and things like that. And that's how we feel. And I guess it's about the communication then,
No, communication is really important. I was a business studies teacher and now a coach and a mother. So I've used all these principles, practices from business, teaching business studies to youngsters and running a side business alongside that. I thought there's really good principles and practices and theory here of how when a group of individuals come together, how they should work, however you define the family. It could be just two people, not even two married people. Two people that are living together become a family. It could be your extended family. It could be a small nuclear family. If those individuals are a group and they are living and working together, we need to have principles and practices that will work for everyone. Look, businesses do it because at the end of the day, they need to make profit.
Yeah.
So they set up ways of communicating. They have roles and responsibilities. They have ways of motivating, ways of supporting each other. So why don't we practice bring some of those practices of businesses into running a family? So I'm a big advocate of what I call running a family like a business.
Yeah.
Because there's theory, there's research gone into that. Let's just use some of that. So one of the things you talk about is communication. One of the things that I am an advocate of and will share with my clients is set up family meetings, have weekly family meetings. The most important unit of people, you should be able to sit down together and not just talk about, who's going to do the cooking, but have gratitude together, share our life goals together, support each other, have those conversations in a weekly family meeting. It's absolutely essential to do that from a very young age, even when your children are, 4 or 5. Get them to sit down and communicate with you without the distractions.
Yeah.
They're good life skills, and it's a good way of creating a good functional family.
Yeah. How do you do that with teenagers?
I taught teenagers for 25 years. They will complain to start off with.
Yeah.
Do we have to do this? I did some work with a family recently, and some of the teenage boys were, do we have to be here? But they'll complain for a while, but when they begin to see the benefits, they'll want to have the meetings themselves.
Yeah.
I started this when my children were teenagers. And now they're the ones that are promoting it to their friends and saying, look, we do this, it works. They're the ones that are saying, look, I've got something on my mind, can we put it on the agenda for the family meeting? My daughter, when she's deciding how to deal with peer pressure from school about drugs, smoking, drinking, she's brought those issues to the family meeting, and her siblings have said, look, some of this stuff I'd never heard before. Some of her siblings were saying, actually, we had those issues, and this is how we dealt with it. So you'd be surprised at what comes out of these meetings.
Yeah.
But you have got to, force it to start off with. But when they begin to see the benefits, they will be on board.
Yeah. And I suppose there's no kind of right and wrong time to start. It's just kind of start now.
Even if it's for 10 minutes, even if it's sitting around the kitchen table, start those conversations, maybe a bit more informal. Let's all go around and discuss one happy thing that happened to us this week, when they're really young. So you're starting it and embedding it in the family, sharing, communicating, supporting, loving, recognizing, doing all those things from an early age. So when they are older, they know that this is a system, this is the way we communicate, this is my support network that I go to, rather than getting advice from people whose values are not aligned to mine. Go to people that in your family that have the same values and have your interest at heart more than anybody else. They will provide you the unconditional love.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of question that, not everyone has the opportunity to be home in time for dinner with their children or their family members, whoever that might be, because they're working or doing something. How would what advice would you give in that situation? Because I know, a lot of parents, they do work until quite late, and by the time they get home, their children, especially if they're young, they may be off to bed and things like that.
There's always a solution.
Yeah.
There's always a solution. If you are a family unit, you can find 1 hour a week to sit together. If you can't, you definitely need coaching and re-establish, look at what you're doing wrong in your life. Because the most important thing is a family, you need to find time. Look, my children went to bed at 7 o'clock, 7:30.
Yeah.
My husband would come home at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
We worked out a system that you go around, put the children to bed, have quality time with them, stagger their sleep times by their age. One can go to bed at 7:30, one can go to bed at 8 o'clock. So you can work things out. If you can't see them during the weekend, do it at the weekend. When you're in a car dropping them off to school, talk to your children. If they've gone away and they're at university, we've done it where we've got them on Skype. It used to be Skype, then now it's Zoom.
Yeah.
With technology, there's no reason why you can't sit down and all communicate.
Yeah. I suppose, you look at your situation and see, what the dynamics are in your household, who's working, who's not, what time people get home and things like that. And then using that information, come to a solution as to what works best for everyone.
Absolutely,
yeah.
There is always a solution to overcome this.
Yeah.
But at least 1 hour where you're all sitting and just talking to each other.
Yeah. What do you say to women that are, at home and consumed by, we talked about this before, the pressures of society, the pressures of your community and things like that, trying to find who you are and what your voice is? Because I know, a lot of women from all different backgrounds, they do have a lot of pressure from communities, family members and so on, especially as women, whether they're, working or not.
We should, extend from the self-awareness. I will say to my clients, look at what your goals are. So my next step to being savvy is have an achiever's mindset. That means have an I can attitude. It is, I always say I can is more important than your IQ. So
that's the A.
That's the A in achiever's mindset. So have an I can attitude. So I can do whatever I want, whatever suits me, that whatever my goals are. So let's first of all identify what my goals are. So do your goals. And so my goal might be that, I want to double my revenue this year. My goal last year, my priority goal last year was health and fitness. I'm going to be 60 this year, so I realized actually I want to be my best.
Yeah.
So I had all these goals written out. So around, my muscle mass, my weight, what kind of weights I should be lifting, my flexibility. Now, if I know that's what is going to serve me, if somebody else calls on me and says, look, I want your demand, I would demand you to be here or do this, and it takes me away from achieving my goal, I have to say no.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be disciplined in knowing what is going to make you happy. What are your goals? If that situation, whether it is, I want to be closer to my family, I want to get to know my children more, spend more time as they're teenagers, and I'm expected to go to family events, and that's taking my time away from what I've carved out as my family quality time, then I have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
Because it's not serving me. It doesn't matter what the pressures are from society. Right? That is the only way you can be happy.
Yeah.
You cannot live a life where you will try to keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
You might keep them happy for that one moment by turning up to that wedding or, agreeing to have a relative come and live with you for 3 months.
Yeah.
But if it's not serving you, at the end of the day, if it makes you unhappy, it'll break that relationship, right? Or it'll break you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just learn to say no. Learn to live a life that's authentic to who you want to be and who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing that is really important in that is the V, values. Know what your values are. And I don't mean what your worth is. I'm talking about the values, the principles that you live by. Now, where do our values come from? They come from our education. They come from our culture. They come from our religion. They come from our community. But sometimes those values don't serve you. For example, my highest value certainly always stays in the top 5 is family. But my definition of family over the year has changed.
Yeah.
When I first got married, I would include my siblings. I had a very close family because of the adversity we went through. But I had to learn to negotiate how to have an in-law family in this. And over the years, as my children have grown up, I can do less for my in-laws and less for my own family. I have to define my family as my children. And then as they grow up, it'll become their partners. So anything that is not making my children and their partners happy, I have to learn to say no to. And I think if you look at what your values are, how you define them, and constantly refresh those definitions. You know, one time, I would have put a different definition to my family. Today, the definition of family is different. And I shouldn't be told by the culture, the society that, okay, you've got a son, your son should live with you.
Yeah.
If it's not going to serve me and it's not going to make me happy and him happy, or I am the only daughter-in-law, I have to live with my in-laws, well, I did that for a time, but it didn't serve us because we wanted to live in a different area where we wanted to work and bring our children up. We didn't want to live in the area that my in-laws lived in. So we had to break away from that. And at that time, there was a lot of upset, but we chose to live a life that would serve us. But we still did for the in-laws. We said, we've got a room here for you. You can come and visit whenever you like.
Yeah.
You can even come with us. But they didn't want to come with us at that time. They said, we want to live in the community that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is hard. But at the end of the time, if you end up living a life, if I'd lived a life where I lived in the area that my in-laws wanted to, I wouldn't have been happy. And it wouldn't have made them happy.
Yeah. And then that has a knock-on effect of for your children, with your friends, just generally with everything.
And I think, self-love is not selfish. We have got to, as women, put ourselves first.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, everything else falls apart. If I'd lived with my in-laws and, resented having to work in schools in that area, having to send my children in that area, it would have broken that relationship and I would have been unhappy. My children would be unhappy. So I think as women, we have got to learn to put ourselves first and let our values guide us. But that does mean we need to sit down and work out what our values are. You have to sit down and, a bit like your communication style, formalize it. We as a family sat down and worked out what our top 10 values are, how we define them, created our family charter, put it up on the wall. And it really helps. It becomes the DNA of the family.
Yeah.
So it's not what family isn't what my community tell me a family should be like. It's what serves and makes us happy.
Yeah.
And it guides my children and keeps us aligned. So let me give you an example. One of our values is to have open and honest conversation. 8 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with chronic lymphatic leukemia.
Oh, wow.
And it's an unusual kind of cancer because they don't treat it until it's got to a level where it's so bad that the blood can no longer function because they've got to kill the blood cells.
Yeah.
So they said, we'll let it run as far as it can because once we've killed them and they regrow, we know this disease will come back. So we don't want to keep destroying them. We want to leave it to a level where it's best to do the chemo.
Yeah.
So my husband said, I don't want to tell the children because they don't need to know. I don't need to have any treatment.
Yeah.
And I was in a real dilemma. My style, my personality is, we share everything. And so we sat with it for a while. And then when we looked up at our family charter, open and honest communication, and said to Jeff, how are the children going to feel if we are not living by the principle that we have agreed ourselves? Yeah. How can we then say to them, you didn't tell us that you were offered drugs. You didn't tell us that this is something bad is going on in your life if we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And then we agreed that the best thing was to tell the children. And we didn't regret it at all, and even Jeff didn't regret it because we got our savvy hats on and said, okay, let's look at self-awareness. Whose strengths are what? Who's going to support Dad in what way? Now, I'm quite an emotional person, but I'm positive. But my son is a bit more level-headed, and he goes, look, I'm going to go to chemo with Dad. Mum, you're not. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to talk about football. I'm going to talk about fun things. I'm going to talk about business. You'll just be looking at him crying. Yeah. And I said, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
My daughter said she's quite a logical person. You know, Leah, who's from the channel. She's quite a logical person. She said, okay, when you go to the doctors, I need these 10 questions answered. Because they were the fears that were in her head. Yeah. So we all came and dealt with it really well. We met our own needs. Leah needed detail. Reece feels that he needs to support Dad in a masculine way. And setting that system up reassured me. So those values really do guide us through every situation in our life. Yeah. And, you know, my youngest, who was a teenager when we did the charter, said, you know what, Mum, I've realised that people in my class that don't have the same values as me, I don't want to be friends with them.
Wow.
And that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Yeah. Is when we're not there, they have the DNA in them to know how to make the right decisions. Yeah. So it's so important. If we do those values and we know the kind of life we want to lead, then I don't care what the community says. Yeah. Well, I do care because that's an important part of. But it will be less of a priority.
Yeah, community isn't about. It becomes negative, then you know that community is not right for you. Yeah, that's the way I'm looking at it. And you know, there's positives and negatives from community, and you take the positives and immerse yourself in that positive side of the community, and you keep the negatives far away as possible.
Absolutely. And you know what? I learnt that from a very young age. My mother and father were both teachers. They came into this country when I was only 1. And sadly, my father went back to India. I was only 10. There were 4 of us by then. And he died in a car crash at 42. Yeah. My mum became a widow at 36, bringing up 4 children. Fortunately, my father had an entrepreneurial mind and had bought properties. So we went into financial adversity, but my mum had to then, from being a mother of 4, become a businesswoman. Yeah. And a widow. And bringing up 4 children. We had emotional deprivation, financial. It was hard. Yeah. We all had to grow up. And believe me, the community had a big influence on us in the Midlands, especially my mum. My dad was a very strong character, but my mum felt I need to fit into this community because I need their support. Yeah. So they were telling her things like, you're a widow, you're 36, but you have to walk around with a white sari. Now, in wintry Midlands, it's just not practical. Yeah. But my mum did do that. She never wore makeup from the day that she lost my father. She wouldn't get married because remarried. It just wasn't acceptable. Yeah. She had a really hard life living up to what community expected. And we were told that, you know, you've got to behave because I'm the only parent that's bringing you up and they will judge me if I do a bad job. Yeah. My mum and dad were far more liberal than the rest of the community, but my mum became less liberal because the fear of not being accepted. Yeah. So I was the only child that wanted to go to university. And she said, well, you can go to university, but, you know, could you stay nearer? What she really was saying is, I don't want you to go away because people will judge me. Yeah. So I ended up having to go to what my kids really laugh about, Wolverhampton University. Isn't that low on the league tables? And I said, well, I went to university. But, I was a strong, driven, ambitious girl who was told by the community I should have been a boy.
Yeah. Were you the eldest?
No, I was the second.
But you had to grow up quick.
I had to grow up very quick. My brother was a bit shyer. He's older than me.
Yeah.
So can you imagine what that does to you when you're told, actually, you need to quieten down. You need to be less ambitious.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're not going to get people wanting to marry you.
Yeah.
And I thought if my dad was here, he wouldn't have allowed this.
Yeah.
But we had to do it for my mum's sake. We had to fit in. It wasn't until I got my degree, I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to go into learning and development. But you see, even then, I played safe, go into a job that means that I can be a good mother and a good wife. Because that's what's drummed into you.
Yeah.
But there was something always niggling inside of me thinking, I can do more. I can do bigger and I can do better. I can have influence over so many more people.
Yeah.
It wasn't until, not even when I met Jeff, who's always encouraged me to do whatever I want and supported me. I didn't allow myself to do that until my children went to university, and then I trained to be a coach because I knew that I could touch more people. But even then, in the same year that I trained to be a coach, I lost my mum and my mother-in-law. And then I thought, that's it. Let me embrace everything my mum taught me. My mum was a businesswoman. She had to be. Look, I really feel like I want to be a businesswoman. And I set up my business, called it Savran. First three letters are from my mum's name, Savitri. The last three letters from Rani, my mother-in-law's name. And I followed my passion. I used my values. I used my self-awareness of my personality. And within 4 months of setting my business up, I won a contract with the Met Police to run 300, to coach 300 officers.
Wow.
I won that contract against big household consultancy companies because I was being authentic. I was passionate about what I did. And when we went to pitch for it, they said, we can feel your passion. This is something you really love.
Yeah.
And that we know that when we put you in front of the officers, you'll get them to open up. And, in the first year of coaching, I won Best Newcomer of the Year. I won awards, all those things that I said to my children I wanted to do at the age of 50, write a book, appear on TV, appear in national papers, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
Now I look back and I'm thinking, all those times I stayed at home, played it safe to be a good mum, I do not regret it.
Yeah.
But what I do realize is that when I made reduced my limitations, made my expectations for myself bigger, I was equally, if not a better mum to them by being being a role model.
Yeah.
They looked at me and said, my son was working for EY. And when he saw that I'd set my business up, Mum, if you can do it, I can do it. He was the first one that, oh gosh, still gets me emotional, that was jumping up for joy when I got my first award.
Aww.
Very special.
Yeah, yeah.
And my brothers. I watched them get awards for best business person.
Yeah.
But for them to be in the room and watch me get it was really special.
Yeah. I think, the whole emotional thing of it is you've been on a journey and going through that journey from, I didn't know your backstory of, when your father passed away in India and obviously your mum's a widow. And going on that journey from that age to where you are now, it is emotional. It is, you've achieved a lot and you've done a lot and you're doing a lot for other people based on your experiences and everything. Like I said, I didn't know your backstory and I can resonate a little bit. My father passed away when he was 47, 48. I was 16.
So sorry.
And I'm the only child. So it was me and my mum and my gran. So my gran used to live with us, and it was hard, but I was really, really fortunate. And to this day, I'm so, I am fortunate, and I'm so grateful that my parents were so liberal and let me be who I wanted to be, even my grandmother, but society and the community often tells you different. And like you said, that's what you and your mother, well, you and your siblings and your mother, you were battling against that, and you have come through it, and you feeling like you felt, when your son got up and was so proud of you, that moment, I think it's fantastic. And it's fantastic for your children to see your full potential to what you are now. Like you said, we're seen as mum, mother.
Oh, just mum.
Just mum, and it's great being a mum, but that label, you just feel like I'm not just a mum, I'm full of so much potential. I've got so much I can give and contribute to so many things. And until you start doing these things, as an example, I always used to say, I'm not creative. I'm just not creative. I can't, think. I'm very practical and very, I like my Excel spreadsheets, which I do. I'm very organised. I love, organising everything. Everything has to be in a little box and I tick it off and things like that. But doing this, podcasting stuff, the creative side has come out of me that I never knew. And I never envisaged I would ever be doing this. And it's only because I've stepped outside that box and people have now gone, oh, you're doing podcasting.
And I applaud you for that. That is amazing. See, I'm trying to work out your personality style.
Yeah.
You're a very process-driven, detailed person.
Yeah.
Now, people don't see that that personality is very creative. It's your Bill Gates.
Right.
It's your Elon Musk. But they do it in a very logical, analytical way and reduce risks.
Yeah.
But I want you to, from today, instead of describing yourself, and I say to all your listeners out there, stop describing yourself through just your roles. I am a creative individual. Even when you did ask me who I am, I did say I'm a person who's passionate about learning and development. I'm driven. I'm ambitious. I'm, family's really important. But those are my traits.
Yeah.
Describe yourself by your positive traits. And so often we will describe ourselves by what we can't do. We need to more and more discover who we really are. And we know it's in there.
Yeah.
You ask other people, ask your family, and they'll be able to help you.
Yeah.
But really drop what I can't do. It's what is it that I'm good at? And when you work out your strengths, use your strengths to overcome your disabilities. In my book, Get Savvy, I not only share the story of the unfulfilled wife, the preoccupied, successful multimillionaire businessman, and the entitled son, 3 modern-day dilemmas. I take these people on the journey of how they get savvy using the principles of, self-awareness, achiever's mindset, verbal communication, values, and inspiration. But in each of those 5 traits, I show you an example of a person who does that well. And for self-awareness, the person I interviewed was Lord Blunkett. Now, you might be a bit young to remember Lord Blunkett.
I remember.
He's he was the Secretary of State for Minister for Education and Health and Pensions as well, I think, at some stage. He was born in the late 50s. Late 50s in Sheffield to a very, very poor family. Now, when he was born, his mother was told that his optical nerves were damaged, so he would never be able to see.
Yeah.
Now, the story is his mum actually went grey overnight with fear of what will happen to my child, because she thought one way of getting out of poverty is through education. It's going to limit his education if he can't see anything and, and all the rest. But then she soon realizes, if I have this attitude, I'm disabling him more. And I've got to bring him up with an attitude of he shouldn't be defined by his disability. So what she did, she pushed for him to have an education, but she had to send him to an institution in Manchester where he could learn to Braille. Now, he went there from, I think, 4 or 5. So he had no real emotional, love and connection, because it's an institution. He describes it as the worst days of his life. But he also values the way that he was brought up, because if he couldn't read and write, he couldn't have got to where he had. It gave him an opportunity to realize that what his skills were, his strengths were his communication and his attitude, his mindset. He had an achiever's mindset. I'm going to achieve. He goes on to ride a bike, swim, and his mum instilled that achiever's mindset in him. He worked out what he was good at, communication, and look what he ends up doing. He had to fight to do his A-levels. All the things that he was passionate about. Safety at work. His father died by falling in a vat of boiling water. He worked for what was British Gas.
Wow.
He was passionate about improving health and safety at work. He was passionate about education. He used all the things that he was passionate about, his strengths and his achiever's mindset, to achieve, most senior position in government. We can all do that. We have got 5 senses. He only had 4. He talks about how he uses his hearing, and he's improved his hearing. He says, I listen to your heartbeat and your movement to work out if you're still interested in what I'm saying.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, and what do? I limited myself by, oh no, I won't be a good public speaker. I won't be able to do that. We can do anything. We just got to use our strengths. You've done it through your way. You've done the podcast, being very organized, working out a system. You're not going to be the individual that'll just sit here and say, right, I'll wing it. Some people can. You've done your research, you've written out your questions, so you can do the podcast. You can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really now, the thing where people say, do the things that make you feel uncomfortable, if you want to do them, if that's what you want to do. Before I used to say, why would you do that? Why would you do the things that make you feel uncomfortable? Just stay in your comfort zone. And now I think, no, do those things, because it will bring out so much from you and within you. And the feelings that you get from that are quite unbelievable. They really are.
Because you need to grow. We are living organisms. Every living organism is either growing or dying. So if you don't grow, you will eventually hit that wall where you, like Zara does in my book, where she's unfulfilled, saying, why am I feeling like this? Because I've got everything on paper. And so many women go through this. On paper, I've got the house, I've got the kids, I've got the wife, but, the life. I've got all the material, but why do I still feel empty? It's because you're not growing. So you can't stay in your comfort zone, because it will hit you. You will hit that wall. So slowly grow. Look for opportunities to grow. Take yourself out of that comfort zone. And that's what we've got to help our children do. Well, we do it with our children because we think they're the years of them growing. But we've got to do that. Believe me, when I wrote my book, it took me 5 years to write it, and I had to go on stage. I had 250 people turn up to the book launch.
Wow.
I had a cabinet minister at the time, Nicky Morgan, who was featured in the book, Lord Blunkett. I had 3 lords in the room. I had billionaires in the room. I had, more importantly, my family, who are going to be my biggest critics. And I've got to go up on stage. I just panicked, and I thought, these people are in the room here for me. But I overcame that. I got up there and I thought, I'm just not going to pretend they're there. I'm just going to talk to you about my book like you're sitting here, like we're sitting here and talking.
Yeah.
And at the end, the feeling I had was like I'd given birth to my fourth child. And I think I would have denied myself that feeling if I had not put myself out of my comfort zone. My English teacher from school would be shocked when they know that. And I've written a book because English was not my best subject. So we got dyslexia tendencies in all of our family.
Okay.
So it's a great feeling. So to all your listeners out there are going to be women listening to this thinking, I know I'm playing small. I know I could be more. It's never too late. Look, I made that change in my life at 50. And when I said to my kids, I want to be in papers, I was on Australia TV News, I was Irish AM, been on BBC Radio.
Yeah.
I knew I could do it, but I didn't even have the courage to share to people I wanted to do that.
Yeah. It's that courage and that step and overcoming that fear. You know, I think that's the hardest part. And now I realise as well, to overcome that fear, you have to do it. Yeah. And you have to keep doing it.
But, don't do it alone.
Yeah.
You know, I got a coach myself. We don't, in this country, we're still a bit reluctant about getting coaches. It's not a therapist.
Yeah.
You get a personal trainer to be your fittest, to push you, to hold you accountable, to open your mind to new ideas. But enough people in this country still don't invest in a life coach. That will do all those things. That'll just, because a life coach doesn't have an agenda. Their agenda is your agenda to make you achieve your goals. But they will challenge you without bias, without judgment. And we need somebody like that. And okay, if you can't afford a coach, at least go out and look for a mentor, go into a networking group.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not a lot of money to invest in yourself to make big life changes. And for me, when I take on clients, I'm thinking, whatever you're investing in a coaching package, I want you to get back at least 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of I was actually sitting down and looking at my female clients, and majority of them last year got promoted.
Wow.
One got 3 promotions in the period that I was coaching her.
Yeah.
That's not the only way you determine success.
Yeah.
For some women, it'll be like, I'm happier in my relationship. You know, I've created I was just reading one of my testimonials on the website, and one client of mine came in with issues around her family, and she says that she's just been able to deal with all the family situations so much better now. And she used to dwell in all the negativity that, I don't have this kind of relationship with. I don't want to say who the individuals were, but dwelling on that. And then you overlook, well, actually, I've got a beautiful relationship with my husband, my children. I should be investing all of my energy into this. Why am I using my headspace on so much negativity? Let's focus on that. Have gratitude for what you have.
I wanted to ask you, what is the why in Savvy? Or are there 2 V's?
There are 2 V's.
Okay.
It's SA. So S is self-awareness. A is achiever's mindset, having an I can attitude. V is for values, understanding what your values are and creating those values that will serve you. And the other V is verbal communication, understanding your communication style and learning how to adapt it to have more influence. That's a very, very important one for my female corporate clients who will often come to me and say, my voice isn't heard.
Right.
In the workplace. And I say to them, you don't need to shout louder. You just need to adapt your style. The thing, I don't want to be abrupt and direct and ruthless like some of the male directors. I said, you just need to adapt your style a bit. So I teach them how to adapt their communication style by reading. Again, using the personality profiles and understanding what the profile styles are of the people that are around you and how you can influence them in a different way. So, for example, I have one client and she's done amazingly well. That was one of her things, is that my voice isn't heard. She's quite process driven, but also an influencer. But her boss is a D personality, very direct, dominant, goals driven. So she could never get to influence him because she would either go in with too much detail and he wouldn't. He was not interested in the detail. He's a big picture thinking. So I had to help her change her communication style and say he needs to hear about solutions, not problems. He needs to hear about how you will help him achieve results, because that's what is his motivator, is results. As soon as she changed the way she messaged it, she had more influence over it. So that's the V in verbal communication. And then the last letter I changed from a Y to an I. Is I for inspiration.
Right.
So a bit about basically going back to what you were saying is we can't stagnate because we will die. So the I is look for inspiration around you. Right. Look for ways you can constantly grow. Even if you're in a happy place now, you still got to look for inspiration. And I give, for each of my elements, I give a model. And the inspiration model I call branch out. And B is for books, constantly read books. You know, I'm always, even if it's, 10, 15 minutes, I have to have some new information going into my head. Listen to podcasts. I should change the B to a P as well, because for me, podcasts are my favorite. I have to listen to a podcast every day because I'm thinking, how can I grow if I don't have new information in my head? And then the R is from branch is role models. Read about role models, even podcasts again. Listen to a podcast of somebody that inspires you, or even get a mentor. One of the things I'm really passionate about is mentors. When we did the Met Police project, one of the things that comes out in, I think, any diversity issue is the importance of a role model. And then the A is advance your skills. Even if it's some online training, constantly keep learning. And the N is networking, go to networking groups. C is coaching, which we already talked about. And H is hands-on experience. You can learn through going and watching somebody. When I used to teach business studies, I didn't have the up-to-date hand knowledge of what's happening in business world. I obviously knew what's in textbooks, but I would make an effort every year to go and spend a week with a professional. I spent a week with somebody from Whitbread, HR director, and learned about new HR practices. I spent a week in British Airways with somebody in marketing. You're learning all the time. It's important that we learn. I mean, you can see I'm a big fan of learning and development. But I think podcast has revolutionized learning. We can, no excuse, I don't have time. I say to my clients, listen to a podcast on the way to work, on the train, while you're walking, while you're running, while you're in the gym. Everybody can find time for half an hour of learning a day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much information now. I mean, we've got everything at our fingertips. It's not like when we were growing up, it was, just books. Like you'd go to the library or you'd go and buy a book. Now, literally Google or YouTube or anywhere, you can learn so much from lots of different...
I was watching this film about a boy in Africa during the famine. His parents were very keen for him to be educated, and they got enough money to send him to school, but they ran out of money because it became a famine. And he wanted to go to the library, and he couldn't go to the library, have access to books unless his parents paid for the school fees. And he was desperate to go and learn. And this boy ends up, because the famine affected the whole village, they had to shut down the school. But he did get permission to go and go and get some books from the library because I think his father was quite senior and he built this windmill which ended up. Did you see that?
I saw that film. Yes, I watched it with my children. There's some films that really
inspirational.
Really inspirational, and I try and get the kids to watch it.
And he goes off to America in the end because he makes this windmill which solves the famine problem for the whole village. Just a little bit of information that boy had. Look at the impact he had.
Yeah.
So just think, if I'd taken some information today into my mind, it will change the way I do things.
Yeah.
And then spend 5 minutes on how will I use this information in my life. And that's what I call being savvy.
Rita, thank you so much for being on the Empower Her podcast. It's been fantastic. I really hope the plethora of information you've provided can help someone out there. It's been great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Empower Her. I hope today's episode has left you feeling inspired and motivated to make a positive difference in your world. Please follow the podcast and share it with anyone who will find it helpful. Until next time, keep striving for positive change and greatness for all women.